The following workshop was previously recorded. The content of this broadcast and the opinions expressed within are intended to be exclusively for informational and educational purposes only and should not be viewed as advice. Are you concerned about running out of money in retirement in your annuity, IRA, or 401k accounts? If you were paying more in fees than you thought or were exposed to unnecessary risk, how soon would you want to know that? The following information is designed to help answer these questions and more. Today's speaker is Mr. Frank Rydell. Mr. Rydell is a certified estate planner and a retirement income strategist.
Well, welcome everyone. We have a very special presentation, very unique times we're living in. So today joining us is Mr. Frank Rydell. He is an executive officer of Hurricane Financial Corporation. Not only that, but Mr. Rydell is a certified estate planner. He's also a certified financial fiduciary, and he's the author of the international Amazon best-selling book, What Keeps You Awake at Night. Thanks for joining us, Frank.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Good to be here.
So we're definitely living in some unique times, and a lot's going on, coronavirus, markets up and down. How do you see this affecting what people are doing today with their retirement and in general?
Well, it's really interesting. This current coronavirus landscape has kind of changed the thought process for a lot of people. And so I don't see it as much with my clients personally, but I do see it out there in the industry as a whole quite a bit. So people are a little afraid sometimes to make a move. And so right now, I think a lot of people are kind of like this guy, just stuck. They've got their head in the sand and they don't want to look up until things get better. And what you have to realize and understand is sometimes opportunities like this are critical times to reassess your path, to reassess the direction you're going towards your retirement, whether you're in retirement or approaching retirement. These can be great times to reassess things because you can't do a lot of other things. You know, it's funny, Eric, that I always tell people that when it comes to talking about your financial future and sitting down with some sort of financial professional in some arena or another to just discuss where you're at and what the plan is going forward is widely unpopular. A lot of people just avoid it. Avoidance is the big thing. And I would say that most people who get to the retirement age and don't have the kind of money in their accounts that they wanted and don't create the type of an account that they wanted in retirement comes down to a lot of years of just avoidance. Really, when you think about it, it's more popular in a lot of people's eyes to go see your dentist than it is to go see a financial professional. And here's what I mean. So I kind of say this tongue in cheek as a joke, but it is true in a lot of ways. When you go see a dentist, you've been there before enough times, typically as a child, you know what's coming. You know when certain instruments come out, you know what that might feel like. You know when you see the needle come out, you know what that's going to be like. So there, even though it's not really exciting or fun to go to the dentist, you at least know what to expect when you get there. When you go see a financial professional, it's scary for a lot of people because they don't know what to expect. That's why avoidance is so big. People tend to want to push it away and push it away and push it away until their account develops sort of like a huge financial cavity that has to be dealt with. And it's at some, like they always say in dentistry, the longer you wait, the worse it's going to be and the more expensive it's going to be for you to get something fixed. It's a lot of times like that when you're talking about your retirement. So avoidance coupled with bad years in an investment are really the types of things that can really cause you to spring a leak in your retirement bucket. And that's what you see here. When you have bad years like 2001, 2008, and by the way, these are not the only bad years out there. These are just ones that tend to be the painful ones that are in recent memory that people like to bring up all the time. There have been others. But when you have bad years and you're trying to make up for losses and you have this sense of avoidance, about your retirement, it can only lead to disaster. So here's what you need to know. The stock market is an investment engine. It is not a retirement income engine. Retirement income is different. Retirement income is really about you repositioning things in your life and your finances to start preserving, protecting, and eliminating unnecessary fees and risk as you go forward so that you have more in the bucket when you do retire, when you are in those golden years. Today, we're going to talk about a couple of subjects. We're going to talk about eliminating volatility and how to protect your retirement account against exposure. We're going to talk about the dark side of compound interest, the roller coaster effect on your finances. We're going to show you the true cost of a 1% fee. We're going to show you how creating an income plan will help you create income that you can count on for the rest of your retired life.
Wow, Frank. Yeah, I've definitely a lot of things to discuss here. I've heard you mention the dark side of compound interest before. Can you take a moment to explain volatility and how losses can really set you back as you're trying to make sure that you have income for retirement?
Well, compound interest is an amazing thing when you think about it. It can work for you, it can work against you. I always love Albert Einstein's quote on compound interest, where he said this, he called it the eighth wonder of the world, and he who understands it earns it, he who doesn't pays it. Very interesting because it's very true. So here's an example, very quick, simplistic example. If you lose 10% in an account, how much do you have to gain to get it back? 11%, because you have less money in the tank. You need to earn more on that money to get back to where you were. See, a lot of people think, Eric, that if you lose 10% and you get 10% back, that you're back. I've seen people who have market accounts that say, they'll say, hey, they lost 6% last year, but hey, just got 6 back. You're not back to where you were. Okay, you think you're back. You may have lost 6 and gained 6, but you're not back to square again. You're still fighting out of a hole. And if you're paying fees, then it's even worse. But look what happens when you go a little bit further. When you have a loss that could be as much as 20%, it's going to take you 25% just to get back to a break-even point. And it goes on from there, and it gets a little bit worse the more you look at this. If you go 30% loss, 43% gain is what you need. Because again, remember, you have less in the tank, 30% less, so you need to earn more on your money just to get back to where you were. That's the break even. So when you look at 40%, pretty bad. Here's a big one. If you ever lost 50% of your account, it would take you 100% earning on the rest of the money just to get back to square where you could actually say, I'm broken even. See, the mistake a lot of people would make here is, let's say there was a disaster, a out and out disaster type of year, and your account suffered a 50% loss. If it did, and let's say over the next few years, you got 50% back, you go, oh, hey, I gained back that 50%. No, you haven't. You're still fighting out of a deficit, trying to get back to where you were. So the lesson that you learn here is that the stock market can go up and down. Well, we know that. That's a yes. And you can predict the market. No, you cannot. Matter of fact, if you have some form of an advisor, your advisor cannot predict the future of the market. Now, I guess you could predict it. Whether or not you're right is the big thing, because anyone can predict it. But being right is where people fail in trying to predict these things. So again, when you have the hole in your bucket, which is not just losses, and you're constantly trying to keep up with the bad years and make sure that you can gain back the extra that you need in order to fill the bucket back up, you've got to watch out for additional things like fees and other consequences to the account that you may not be considering today.
I'm finding, Frank, that everyone thinks they have a crystal ball, but when it comes to this coronavirus and even to the markets, no one has that clarity of what's going to happen in the future. How critical is timing when it comes to retirement and taking that income stream?
Well, timing is very, very critical. And that's why I say, as you get closer to retirement, or speaking to some people who may be in retirement right now, transitioning away from unnecessary risk and fees is so huge. It's so critical because the timing is critical. At a certain stage of life, you are on a shorter runway or a shorter path. You can't afford the makeup years that you might have been able to afford when you were much younger. So let's take an example here, and I'm going to show you kind of a little bit of a sibling rivalry. We're going to say this is a brother and sister, And we're going to say that Heather retires at one point, and we're going to show her first 4 years of retirement. Her younger brother, Steve, comes along 4 or 5 years later. He decides he's going to retire. And we'll show you the first 4 years of two different environments. Her first 4 years are in a very stable environment. His first 4 years are going to be a little bit choppy. And so we're going to show you how that effect of just maybe mistiming it is going to have an effect on where you stand. So if you look at Heather having $500,000 in a retirement account, Heather and Steve both will need $40,000 a year to supplement their Social Security and whatnot in order to have enough income in retirement. So let's kind of walk through some hypothetical figures and just show you what it could look like hypothetically. If Heather retires in a stable market and she sees all increases, well, that's pretty darn stable right there. 7%, 10%, 6, 12. There's no real jumps up and down. So it's not as spiky as what you see over here with Steve. Steve is in what you call an up and down market. So how is this going to affect you? Well, over a 4-year period, Steve has $166,513 less than his sister. So let's look at the numbers quick. And in this simplistic hypothetical example, let's take a look and just see how Heather ended up with more money than her brother. Well, we know that they both started with $500,000 in their retirement accounts. They're both taking $40,000 a year out in income to supplement their income. And so you look at the scoreboard here in year one. Heather starts out with a balance of 500. So does her brother Steve. And the first year, her earning is 7%. The brother is at 8. Again, they're retiring about 4 or 5 years apart at different points on the calendar here. This is not year for year the same year. Her balance is a little bit less than her brother's. They take out their income at the end of the year. Her brother is actually $5,000 better than she is. So in year 2, you start out with the beginning balances and you say, all right, Heather's in a very stable market, as we already established, and Heather is getting 10%. Steve lost 9. So you look at the account balances. Here's where it really starts to make a difference. She's having a second good year. He's now finding volatility. So you look at that difference, which is very, very big, and you start thinking, what happens when you take out income? Well, it's going to start really getting obvious at this point. At the end of year 2, the gap or the difference between these accounts are huge. We're talking $89,000 and change difference between these accounts just because Steve had one bad year. So you look at year 3 and the opening balances, and as we established, there's a pretty big difference between Heather and Steve at this point. 3rd year, Heather is still in her very stable environment. Steve is now having a big bounce back year and feeling really, really good about himself. But you look at the new balances, and he is still nowhere close to his sister, even with this massive bounce back year. So again, thinking about what Einstein said about compound interest being the 8th wonder of the world, this is an example right here. Because he had a bad year, a lost year, it's taking a lot more. So if you reference what I was just saying a couple moments ago, when you have less in the account, you have to earn that much more just to get back to 0. Just get back to an even again, where you're not at a negative. And so here's a perfect example. She's had stability for the first 3 years. He had one bad year to this point. He's going to have another one on year 4. But to this point, he's only had one bad year. He's had a massive bounce back year. She doesn't have a year with numbers as high as 17%. That's a really good year. But look at the difference in the ending account balances from one to the other. It's massive. It's a huge difference simply because of that one bad year. There's your effect of compound interest. And he who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it. That's what Einstein was saying, and that's what you're seeing right here. And really, when you think about it, this isn't as much Heather understanding it and Steve not understanding it. In some ways, it's kind of like dumb luck. One just retired in the right time, the other one didn't. And so one is going to take advantage of compound interest, the other one is going to pay compound interest and losses. So look at year 4. Year 4, this really starts to make a stark difference. Heather, again, having a very good, stable year. Brother having an up 1 year, down the next scenario his first 4 years. And so just like in year 2, year 4, he has a negative. So you look at their income coming out at 40,000 a year, you look at the ending balances. So this is where you get this massive difference in the retirement between these two in just 4 years. And in some ways, like I was just saying, this might be nothing more than just dumb luck. And maybe neither of these two people understand what they're currently in and the direction they're going. They just have an account and they're always hoping for the best. She actually hit it, he didn't. So there's the difference. So what is the lesson learned? That in retirement, timing is critical. That's a big affirmative yes. And investment accounts are designed to secure lifetime retirement income. Again, no, they're not. Investment accounts are designed to try to earn something. Now, they're also going to lose from time to time, but the idea and the hope is that they earn something, earn a return. But they're not really set up or designed to secure lifetime income. You may pull income out of an investment account, but is it secure lifetime income? Or is it just income that you have access to until the account runs out? That's the question you have to ask yourself.
Wow, Frank, that's really amazing difference between Heather and Steve and their balances. And I think it really highlights what you called the dark side of compound interest. When your advisor says, "Oh, hang in there, don't worry, it'll come back," and you see here with Steve that it did come back, but it still didn't matter, or it didn't make up for the differences. Does any of this take into account the fees they're paying on their accounts?
So, Eric, you make a great point. All we were showing there between Heather and Steve was a $166,000 difference with no fees coming out of the account. So when you think about fees, well, that's a hole in the bucket. And that's a hole that a lot of times people don't bother trying to plug or don't know that they can plug just because they think that it's just part of the game. So the mistake, Eric, that a lot of people make is that they simply go out and seek someone that looks good in a suit. A lot of times people will find a company to work with that maybe they've seen ads on television during a football game or something, and there's a lot of ads on TV. There's a lot of ads in magazines. There's a lot of ads on the internet for companies. And I think one of the mistakes is that people don't really vet out what they're doing. They just simply sit down with a advisor from a large firm and they say, well, they're a big company. They've been around for a long time. I'm familiar with their name. They're all over television. So this has got to be the right place for me. And what ends up happening a lot of times is they're buying into a name and they're assuming that fees are just part of the game. And they're signing on to have an account be handled by somebody who's ultimately charging them unnecessary fees. All the while, their accounts may be very much at risk in some cases. So let's use an example. So let's just say, on his hypothetical example, that Bob is age 60 now. And when Bob turns 60, he realizes that over his life, as he's worked, he has saved up $300,000. And Bob decides at this point, this is kind of supplemental income. He's still working. He's going to work for a while. He feels healthy. He likes his job. So this $300,000 isn't necessarily for immediate retirement needs, but it's part of his estate and he wants to protect it. So he says, you know what, instead of just having this money sitting around in an account that's not earning much, I need to get it out there. I need to go talk with some big firm about managing this account. Let's see if we can do better. So Bob goes out and he finds someone who can help him. And Bob opens an account that's earning 5% a year. Now, Bob's not going to take any distributions, and he's going to pay an annual fee of just 1%. 1% doesn't sound like a lot when you say it as 1%. We're going to show you the net effect of 1% on Bob's account over a 25-year period. So whether Bob was age 60 or Bob was age 30 or whatever, if he had this kind of money and he invested over a 25-year period and had an account that grew 5% every year. Now, seriously, no losses. We're gonna give the advisor the benefit of the doubt and say that for a 25-year period, whatever he was in performed beautifully. 25 years of earning 5% per year with never a loss. And Bob's only paying 1%. When a lot of people look at that and they say, well, quick math here, let's see, he earns 5, he's paying 1, so he's netting 4. Is that correct? It is not correct. Let me show you an example. The total fees paid over a 5-year period, $17,000. And you can see how that grows over time. By the time you get out 25 years, that 1% is really cutting into the account by $130,000. Now, when Bob started out, he may have been told it's going to be a 1% management fee, and he might have signed on for that, no questions asked, because it sounds normal. But if that same person, that same advisor had said, we're going to manage this account, but oh, by the way, Bob, over the next 25 years, if we get these kind of gains and the account compounds this way, like we're hoping, you'll pay about $130,000 in fees. Now, if Bob heard that number, he may want to go home and think about that for a few days. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure he would, because that's a big, big pill to swallow. 1% doesn't seem like a big pill to swallow. You can kind of maybe think about that for 10 or 15 seconds and say, okay, sounds good, sounds fair. $130,000, that doesn't seem quite as good. So if his account earns 5% a year, he's taking no distributions and having a 1% fee, what does it look like? Well, you can see the beginning balance. He walked in the door with $300,000. So the company he's with now did nothing to get him to 300. That's something Bob accomplished on his own. But over that next 25 years, if he went from age 60 to age 85, Bob is paying that $130,000 in fees, which means that the net growth is $490. So what do we know about advisory fees? If fees can devastate your account, absolutely affirmative, yes. They can devastate your account. If you don't think that $130,000 is devastating to an account like Bob has, you've got another thing coming. Maybe you're okay with giving away money. For one, I am not. Fees are just part of the game. It's what everybody pays, right? Wrong. But what if fees were optional? Have you ever thought about that? When most people come in and they sit down with me, they bring in, I'll tell them to bring in any plans, income plans that they may currently have, any insurance policies, and just generally a list of any types of an accounts that they may have, and you know, what is the purpose of the account? What are you trying to accomplish, and what is your goal long term? And our team of analysts will look this over and help make a determination on what we may be able to offer to better equip them as they go forward. Most people, Eric, walk in with what I call the financial junk drawer. And I don't say that to be demeaning to anyone, but it's like you look at these items in your junk drawer here, and let's just say the tape measure over there on the right represents an IRA, and the glue pen just above that represents a Roth account, and the playing cards, the bicycle playing cards up there on the left, that represents a 401k, and a calculator represents an insurance policy. They have various pieces of a financial puzzle in a drawer, in a pile of statements oftentimes, but yet it's not really a plan, because what they have bought is various products over the years from maybe 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 different people who have sold them simply products. And to the client, they feel like, well, if I have enough products and I put enough money in enough different things, then I'm going to come out okay, is the hope. But when you really get into the planning side, and coming from my background with estate planning, when you really sit down and you think about multi-generational planning, what you find is that if you develop a retirement plan that is based on concrete numbers and things that you can count on, you end up creating a system where these various pieces work together, where that IRA and that 401k can be better positioned to produce income long term without unnecessary risk and fees, where the insurance policy can be updated or corrected or fixed or changed or left in place if it's correct to supply the necessary death benefit needs that the family may have. But once all these pieces work in conjunction with each other, instead of a junk drawer, it's amazing. You have a seamless plan where one account is communicating with the next account and the next account and the next account. And what you walk away with as a client is you're walking away with a sense of, hey, listen, I now know what I have. I know where I'm at. I know what my goal is. And I have a better idea where I'm going to be in 10 years or 20 years down the road versus just walking into sitting down with some financial professional and dumping a bunch of statements on their desk and saying, you figure it out. So creating a lifetime income plan that'll last your lifetime is critical. You know, when you think about things like retirement, you want to be able to relax. You want to enjoy the years that you had where you toiled and you worked and you saved. You don't want to be sitting like this couple at the beach who look very comfortable and relaxed, but you don't want to be sitting there stressing out about, oh my gosh, you know, we're in some exotic place sitting on the beach and we're enjoying ourselves, but I just picked up my phone and I just looked and, oh my gosh, the US markets are tanking again. And, you know, what is that doing to our account? So you're sitting on the beach and now you're trying to call your advisor back home and ask what's going on? Are we okay? Wouldn't you rather have the peace of mind to be able to just relax and know that no matter what is going on in the news, your accounts are safe, you're protected, your lifetime income is going to be there for your entire life? So when you have a written retirement income plan, that's something that all of our clients leave with. You'll come in with questions, you'll come in with paperwork, you'll sit down with one of our professionals and you'll go through various scenarios of what your goals are, what your needs are. And ultimately, what do you want your estate to be? How do you want to be remembered? What is your legacy going to be when you're gone? See, a lot of people don't think about legacy planning, but if you have something, legacy doesn't necessarily mean that you have kids. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have kids that you're going to leave any money to. Oftentimes it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. A legacy can just simply be how your life and your impact on the world from a financial standpoint is going to live beyond you. It's certainly going to take care of you if you do it right in your retirement years. But once you're gone, and that's something we all have in common, once we're gone, what is going to happen with your financial estate? Is there an estate left? Is there anyone that's going to benefit from the life you lived? So a written income plan is going to show you when income begins. Okay, for some of you, it may begin sooner than later, depending upon your age. The source of those payments, we're going to talk about things like required minimal distributions and how RMDs are going to come out of that account, when they're going to come out. In some accounts, in some income plans, some companies will offer bonus growth to the account. So when you structure the account right, you'll actually get some bonuses that can help make up for maybe what you perceive as a shortcoming in your account. It'll give you a little bit more jump start, so that there's a little bit more to work with in the account when you get to those years where you're actually withdrawing money. Understanding the death benefit and estate value is very, very critical. So in summary, you have to ensure that you're not overly exposed to risk. Unnecessary risk and fees are the things that'll eat the account faster than anything else. So just simply not being exposed to unnecessary risk and fees, protecting yourself from bad market timing, and creating an actual written income plan is so critical. It'll help you sleep better at night. It's the number one thing that keeps people awake at night, is worrying about their finances. So I'm going to invite you to download a free copy of my book. The ebook can be downloaded if you click the button below and download a copy. We're giving away copies to people today. Read it, enjoy it. It may allow you to start thinking of a different line of questioning when you're sitting with a financial professional. And ultimately, if you choose to give us a call, we'd be happy to sit down, have a conversation with you about taking the next steps, and at least seeing an analysis of where you are and where you could be. What you'll find a lot of times is, I'm just thinking of a client I worked with a few years ago, a gentleman who came to me and said, Frank, I'm worried and concerned that I have enough to retire, And I said, well, what makes you worried or concerned about this? And his explanation was, well, in recent years, I've had a couple good years in my account, and I've had some years that haven't been so good. So I'm kind of treading water a little bit. I'm not really sure. So this was a timing question for him. He had gotten to a point where he really started worrying about timing. Is this the right time? And he was in a stressful job that he hated, and he was wanting to get out, but he was thinking, maybe I'm in this another 4 or 5 years because I really want to build this nest egg up a little bit bigger and hope something doesn't happen in between, because I'm just not comfortable with the ups and downs. After doing a comprehensive analysis with him at no charge, we were able to put together a plan and show him how today he had enough income and could secure enough money against risk and eliminate those unnecessary fees right now, and he had enough to walk away and retire with. Interesting, the accounts were put in place, and about 4 or 5 months later, he called me up and he said, Frank, I gave notice. And it was the happiest day of his life. He said the happiest day of his life was giving notice in this high stress job he was in, and he was moving on because he now had a plan and he knew what he could count on. And it was a difference between uncertainty and being awake at night and worry versus having peace of mind. So I want to thank everyone for being here today, and thank you for allowing me to come in and talk. I want to invite you to take advantage of this time. Take advantage of the opportunity. Don't be the guy with your head in the sand. Take this opportunity to take a look and assess where you're at, so that when things do get better and life returns to more normalcy out there, that you're not behind, 2 steps behind everybody else who are now taking advantage of this time to assess where they're at. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking with many of you very soon.
Thank you for attending this informational workshop. We hope you found it informative. The content of this broadcast and opinions expressed within are intended to be exclusively for informational and educational purposes only, and should not be viewed as advice. Because results may vary, listeners are encouraged to seek professional advice whenever considering any concept, idea, or strategic approach. Start building a true plan of action today and say goodbye to unnecessary fees and risk. Call Hurricane Financial via phone today at 888-200-8161 or visit us at hurricanefinancial.com. Hurricane Financial. Wealth, security, control in the eye of the storm.